Hi, this is Paul Sanneman with Business Success Tips, telling you how to make more money in less time and have more fun. I'm really excited about our guest today, Danny Kerr. He is the founder of one of the largest coaching companies in the country. In fact, it's in Canada too. That's where they physically are located. So, Danny, just tell them how you got the company started, what it does, how it works, and tell the contractors sort of what you learned and why you got the company started.
Sure. Yeah. It came from living and growing up really in the franchising world, actually. So, for a painting company, I spent a lot of time being a franchisee for many years and then being on the executive team there and leading and developing franchises and seeing the dichotomy between what the trades offers and what like real true business education offers and how those two worlds really didn't coexist very much, especially in this industry. So,
Right.
I was there for about 8 years, spent another further 2 years with a management consulting firm, and just saw the pattern over and over and over and over again. There's very little formal business practices in contracting, and there is a lot of money, a lot of opportunity, and it was doing nothing but growing. And I happened to have this unique cross section of skill of understanding the trades and also just understanding good old fashioned business, right? So um, yeah, the idea sat with me for about 4 years. I played around with it a little bit, moonlighted the idea. And then finally in 2015, my business partner, Igor, and then about a year later, my third business partner, James, launched what is Breakthrough Academy today. And it was essentially based on the idea of how do you support somebody, not from like a coach's standpoint, but from like a franchisor's standpoint. Now,
So
we're not.
basically, you're a franchisor without being a franchisor. All the
Oh,
reason people buy franchise is because they have a given business model they know works. They buy the franchise, and it's going to happen, right?
correct.
So you have like sort of that franchise model without people paying a franchise fee, for lack of a better term, right?
You got it, Paul. Yeah.
Okay. So, question with that. So, tell me a little about your growth, how you got started, how many, how big you are now, and what you got going on.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, starting in 2015, we kind of, I would say, like piloted that year. So we just wanted to see, are the pain points what we think they are? Let's work with, I think we worked with about 20-ish clients at the time, and wasn't hard to bring on clients, but what was interesting was how much we learned how they all had the exact same issues. So through the tail end of 2015, created our first course called the Blueprint Program, which still exists to today. It's basically our first start for all of our members. And then also saw and knew just from years of supporting franchises that there needs to be an ongoing continuous relationship of support, accountability, implementation of all of these ideas. And we decided to go that hard route, which was we need to hire a team to help us do that, because it's one thing to sell an online course. It's another thing to maintain that relationship for 3 to 7 years, which is what we've done. So yeah, over the years we've grown. We have actively right now just about 600 companies we are actively engaged with as we speak. All of them are in a bi-weekly rhythm with us where they go through certain learning sessions, group meetings, one-on-ones. We do quarterly reviews with all of them, and we track everything. So we know their sales, production, financials. We know how they're doing. We can see the aggregate pattern of all of our companies as well, and provide them with everything they need. So all their systems and processes are pre-done. They can edit them, and we've gone the lengths of trying to basically standardize each major industry. So, construction, landscaping, painting, roofing, renovation, sub-trades, home services, create them to almost a franchise level spec, and then give everybody the tools so everybody benefits.
So, clear question. I've been coaching for 40 years, right? The biggest problem I always found out wasn't knowing what to do. It was getting people to do stuff that they know they should do, but they don't.
Yep.
So with contractors, it's like the no time for time management thing, right? So how do you actually get contractors to change their behavior?
It's a slow process.
Interesting
It doesn't happen overnight. Some are obviously more engaged than others, but if there was a bell curve, I would say, the average engagement that we have probably takes about 3 to 6 months to get them to a place where they're actually committed to what we've been talking about. The beginning is very much just listen to us for 6 weeks, but we're going to teach you a ton of things. You should just write down notes. Some of you will go do some of those things on your own without us, which is great, but very few of you will, right? So we know that. We then put them into a 3-month kind of like I would call it intensive, where we're not teaching anything new, but all the focus is implementation. So it's one small thing every 2 weeks. Like, let's just get employment agreements done. Here's all the tools, 80% complete for you. Here's all the back end information you're going to need. And then there's a group meeting every 2 weeks where we live are meeting with you. Did you hit the goal? Did you not? We have some accountability around everything. We have a checklist on what they've done and have not done. And it pretty quickly weeds out who's actually wanting to be there and who thought they wanted to
Well,
be.
what kind of compliance do you get? Because as a franchisee, if you bought a franchise like a Lair or something, you'd have to like, there's a regular franchise,
Yep.
but you're like all the good stuff of a franchise without actually charging a franchise fee. So if they're not officially a Breakthrough Academy business, because it's their own business still, how do you get them when they say, well, I haven't got time, or it doesn't work for me, or I've tried that? I mean, do you have specific kind of software you use, specific kind of accounting and that kind of stuff?
It actually goes back to our sales process. So you don't just join Breakthrough Academy, you go through an initial call, then you go through a discovery call, then you go through an hour and a half business assessment, then you finally purchase something, and that's that 6-week course, which I always call a bit of a dating period. So it's like, let's get to know you, let's make sure you show up and you're doing your part. Then you go through a week 5 conversion call. Then finally you can join our foundations group. And after 3 months, the people that are left from that are usually pretty good to go.
What's your fallout during that process?
So I could just tell you all the stats. So from initial QSO call, like initial lead, to actual like join Blueprint, spend some money with BTA, there's about a 30% group that makes it their way through. And that's not just us, that's them betting themselves too, right? But about 4% of them come through. From Blueprint to starting the implementation process with us, it's about 85% move through there. And it's exactly what you said, Paul. It's the ones that don't come through, don't have time or the capacity to take on what we've just taught. And then through foundations, you usually have another 5 to 10% drop. So we try to do our best, right? Even from our branding, to brand ourselves a certain way to attract a certain type of contractor. And we do see it very much as almost like a long-term interview process between us and them. Make sure if we're going to go for 3 to 5 years, that you're actually knowing what you're going to get involved in. The expectations are set well, and they have a chance to kind of like try it and see if they actually have what it takes.
So how do you find contractors?
Right now, currently, a large amount of it comes off of our podcast. And not to say that our podcast drives everybody in, but it is the one content engine that every week comes out and lets the market know who we are. That spins off into webinars, speaking engagements, organic referrals from sharing of links, and just contractors talking to their people about us. And so that one piece of content is the thing that a lot of people see prior to talking to us, builds a lot of the trust and the expectation of what they would get from us. And yeah, I mean, our primary like direct to source conversion tool is usually our webinars. It's kind of like we'll do a pretty high level overview of what we do, followed by like, this is a really good just like tools. Like here's a budgeting tool, here's example templates for your employment agreements, here's physical downloads, totally for free, gets them kind of interested, playing around with us. And then once they engage enough, they indicate they want to be called. That gives us the go ahead and have a chat. So
give me, I'm sure you know this probably off the top of your head, your biggest success and why, and your biggest failure and why, at least that comes up for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots.
You don't have to give the person's name.
Yeah, I can just think of like our Entrepreneur of the Year award last year we gave out, right? It's to a roofing company that hit about 50 million. I think they started around 5-ish million with us about 3 or 4 years earlier. So it's a pretty big rapid growth. For them, there's 3 partners. I think they came in knowing what they were getting into. They were hungry for it. They tried it a little bit in the past, but had very little success because there was no direction on what to do first and what the steps were. And for us, it's very directional, right? Like it's not a guessing and testing thing. If you're a roofing company that's at $5 million and you want to go above 10 or more, like it's literally just like, we have every single step for you already laid out. Here are all your resources. So they were very good students. They did exactly what we asked of them. Their numbers were clean. And so we could give very strategic support when we see, labor percentage dropping by 4%. We can see what crew it's on. We can see what's causing it. We can put a process in that's different. Or
now, do you have the specific software for roofers that you use, or do you have a general?
So we use we use a combination of things. I mean, the very simple form that we use is it's called a master business planning form, or basically a master plan. It's based in Google Sheets, so it's nothing crazy complicated in that way, but it does allow them to put inputs in once a week, and then it spits out to them a dashboard of where everything is at, sales, production, and financials, but versus the goal. So if there's a variance in any of those areas, we can then dive deeper and see what specifically is happening in production or sales or the financials. And once we pinpoint the issue, it's pretty glaringly obvious what needs to change, and we apply a process to it. And so people like that we work with, like they follow that methodology, they're quick to implement that process, and away they go. But we take a lot of the guesswork out. It's more just about being committed to looking at the numbers with us and actually doing what we find out. So making the changes that we find out.
So like going to the gym, you have a personal trainer that says 4 more reps, or don't do it that way, or it's very specific instructions, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so tell me about one of the biggest failures that comes to your mind and why.
Again, there's those as well. I mean, and a lot of those are the early engagements that we have, right? Where you have somebody come in, they're very eager. Often they don't ask enough questions of us. So I have to be pretty, explicit with my sales team when you have someone like that that's ready to buy too quickly, that you slow them down and set expectations of what this is going to take. But yeah, like every year you have 1 or 2 that go through this and they say like, this is not at all what I expected. This is not what I wanted. This is, I just wanted a quick fix. And, I see some people who are just used to going to a seminar, let's say, and getting these big motivating ideas to go and conquer the world, but aren't ready to actually do the work and hoped that BTA was going to give them all the answers in 6 weeks. And the reality is we're not. 6 weeks is going to be a good intro to us. And so I've had a few people upset, say early on with us, where it's like, this was great. This was 6 weeks of stuff, but like now I have a bunch to do and I don't even know where to start. And we're like, yeah, I know it takes 3 to 5 years to do this. And if you don't know that going into that engagement with us, I could see how that's pretty upsetting. And so we've had some of that along the way, for sure.
Okay. So when your contractors, I mean, I've had coaching a long time. It's like getting people to do things, getting to follow the rules, looking at all the numbers. How do you get them being data driven versus emotional driven, if you know what I mean?
Some are more than others, man. Like I'd love to say that we breed that into them over time, but there was a natural tendency for some of them to love the data, and they always have been that way. And some of them are more emotionally driven, and they've always been that way. I don't think we're changing that in people too much. We might provide them with better tools, so no matter how their organic, way of being is, they have more clarity on that. But a lot of that comes down to the magic of our coaches. Like they're pretty. They're coaches, they're consultants, they're mentors. They play a few different roles within these businesses. And when in the beginning, I was one of the coaches. So I coached, first 20, 30 members that we ever had in BTA. And I had very different meetings, right? I had meetings with some companies where, like you said, it was all about the numbers. We looked at numbers. It was very robotic. We make a decision, move forward. I had other ones that was kind of just a counseling session. Right. And we're just going through how they're feeling and how to have a conflict with a certain person and walking through the conflict steps and providing support and direction. And so our coaches, because we're not just a online video platform with some cool tech tools, because we actually meet with them one-on-one as well, and we take time to get to know them personally, we can be that flexible. And I kind of think we meet to the needs of the company we're working with. So
so when if say I want to succeed as a contractor, I'm, making a living, I'm doing a couple million and maybe make $100,000 and working 60 hours a week. And it's tough, because my clients aren't great. My employees aren't great. I'm sort of fighting the battle, which I think is your average contractor if I was going to pick it.
Yep.
So if they're not going to hire you, what do you think they should do?
Well, I mean, most of them, it's a combination of knowing their budget, like having a budget.
Right.
Being able to prioritize their time, which you had just mentioned, right? There's 2 quick exercises I would say you should do. The first one, which is the lowest hanging fruit, is make a list of everything you do in a week, circle the stuff that's high time consumption but low skill, and make that either something you delegate to a current
like
team.
The Pareto's 80-20 rule, right? The Pareto's principle thing, right?
Yeah, and it's an annual evaluation of your own job description. Like most people don't have job descriptions, so it's like instead of saying go out and create one all on your own, the simplest thing is just make a list of what you do, circle stuff that's high time consumption and low skill, and that needs to be delegated or hired as your next role. And it's the cheapest role to hire for usually, because it's the stuff that's the most menial stuff, and that opens up space. But until you open up space for other things in your business, you will stay stuck. A lot of people, I need more leads. I need more. It's like whatever you need more of, you'll probably be the best person to go get it, especially if it's required growth, right? So until you have space to go do any of those things, good luck trying to hire someone else to do it, especially if it's never been done in the company before. I see people hire sales reps for the first time ever because they're like, I don't have time to do sales anymore. And I'm like, well, you don't have a process for this. You're going to hire a sales rep hoping they're going to bring all the work in. Chances are they're probably going to fail. So
But where do they get, if they don't hire you, just where do they get the processes? Are they available on the internet? Or they, I mean, how do you get, you're meeting a guy in a bar, all right?
yeah,
And you, for some reason, you're not going to service his area, right?
yeah.
But he seems like a really nice guy. You like him, you want to help him out. And he says, you know what? I've been at this for 10 years. I make 100 grand a year. I never see my kids. I work 60 hours a week. You know, I've got 4 guys that are like, okay, I've got a couple good clients. It's really tough. I'm thinking of leaving. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll go become a project manager. And you're, you know, you met him, you're gonna give him some advice. You say, well,
Move them
if I
on.
were you, I would, whatever.
There's some other like again, I'm just a firm believer in getting support from external sources, right? So,
Okay.
Painting Business Pro, Eric Barstow, he runs a really good course. It is video based. It's not, you don't have a coach, but you have at your fingertips all the answers that you need. Ryan Groth, Sales Transformation Group, works mostly with the roofing industry, does a phenomenal job. What's this? I can't remember the name of it now. There's just other business groups where businesses are of the similar size, similar stature, similar industry, if not the
Like
same.
Builder 20 and that kind of stuff.
Builder
Right?
20 network, they're out there. You need to get plugged in because otherwise you're going to try and reinvent the wheel for yourself, spend 20 years trying to figure it all out and scratch your head when all the answers are sitting in these groups because all the owners are sharing ideas and giving them to each other for nothing. And in today's world of technology, if you're not plugged into something like that, you're just gonna go the way of the dinosaurs. You're not gonna be able to get ahead. These guys are not holding their cards close to their chest. They're not hiding all their secrets. They're literally sharing with each other. And what would take you a year to figure out will take a 10-minute conversation on a Zoom call with somebody that is in the same industry as you. So I would just say get plugged into a peer group where you can talk to people that are doing what you're doing.
So what I hear you saying is one, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And secondly, get help. Don't just try to do it all yourself. There's a lot of help out there through the internet, through books, whatever. You can get help, but it's not a good idea for you to say, hey, I can figure this out. How hard is it to run a construction business?
Yeah, it's very complicated. it's it's one of the more complicated businesses out there when it comes to small business anyways. There's too much going on, and the HR side of it alone is getting harder every single year. And
Right.
it's not impossible. It's just if your problem see the problem is most of us as entrepreneurs, we pride ourselves on our creativity and our ability to figure things out and problem solve. And I
Right.
think that gets most businesses to like $1 million. Like I've seen a lot of companies just through piss and vinegar be able to figure it out. But $1 million and up, I mean, you can create quite the mess if you don't start to understand what is truth, which is like there is usually one or two good ways to do something. And trying to figure that out on your own just seems like a waste of time. Like someone else already has the answers. Just go get them and use it and move
Well, I
on.
tell people, you know, you can stay in business as long as you can afford to pay for your mistakes, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and that's true even for us. Like we do new stuff all the time, and we often like to try it ourselves first because we're stubborn and we think we have the best ideas in the room. We screw it up, and then we go find someone who can give us the answers and move on.
Well, that's like, you know, the recruiting thing. They're really bad at recruiting. And, you know, if you offer them recruiting and marketing, all these things, a lot of guys, one, trust is a big issue, right? It's the, you know, no, what is it? No, like trust thing. So I've had a problem over the years getting contractors to let go. You know,
Mhm.
I tried hiring this guy, he ended up screwing up. They have stories, you know, about how, and they become sort of victim. Like I tried this, I tried that, it didn't work. And their trust level is low. Make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
So how do you get them to trust you or just get to trust? Because
I,
it's tough.
I call it the prove it process. So you can talk hypothetically about any issue, about how it should be solved at a high level, and you'll attract a certain amount of people. But I think the real heavy hitters, the ones I actually really love to work with, are skeptical. And they do come in wanting to say, like, basically, like, prove it to me, because I don't trust anything around me. I've been screwed too many times, and I am smart, and I do believe in what I do is best. And it's going to be hard for someone to show me otherwise. So, an example, say you're talking about recruiting, I'd say, cool. Here's a process that's undeniable, right? So you have that resumes that come in every year. Yep. Do you score them? Do you hold on to them? Do you do anything with them afterwards? Often the answer is no. And I'm
Right.
like every single time a resume comes in, score it out of 10, save that as the file name in a Dropbox folder. So you can sort down the road and have 10, 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s, 5s, and re-email them and re-engage them down the road as positions become open for the next 5 years. And now you have a database of old resumes. That's an undeniable strategy that is nothing but beneficial. It doesn't require high level thought or I trust that that would work for you or me. It's like, no, I know that would work because it's a database of people that I never
Right.
kept before, and I probably should keep them. And so just being able to give them tangible stuff that they're like, yeah, like I don't even have to try it to know that that would work. I think that helps a lot of people be like, right, there must be more here behind the curtain. What else you got?
Right.
So
Right. So to trust it, I mean, we use assessments, and to hire somebody without assessing them is just not smart, but you got to get them to do it. Right.
yeah,
So it's the same thing with marketing. I mean, what do you use? Because marketing is a big issue, right? I mean, I believe that if you have great clients and you have great employees, this is really a great industry. If you have not so good clients and bad employees, it's horrible.
mm-hmm.
So the question is, I mean, I know the recruiting part because that's what we do, but on the marketing part, how do you find those good clients?
Kind of like I said with our podcast, it's not too dissimilar. Like we take a lot of time to listen to our current clients, which we have many of. What are their actual pains? And again, if we're going to have a podcast, let's have a podcast on very, very viable solutions that even just listening in your truck while you're driving, you literally could be like, oh, I could do that next week. And if
Mhm.
they, listen to a podcast every 2 to 3 weeks, get a few good ideas, chances are one of those ideas eventually they're going to try. And if it works, well, now they've just proven it to themselves. Hey, this stuff is actually really good. That engages them more. I'll listen to more episodes. I'll get more ideas. And it's the speed of it's the speed of them. Like we're not trying to say, hey, go do all these things every week, but they'll choose to once in a while. And that finally leads to somebody who says, hey, I've been following you guys for a year or two. You guys are
Right.
awesome. Already before I've even talked to you, I've used 2 of your processes or 5 of your processes, and it's changed our company dramatically. And those are the types of conversations we're starting to have right out of the gate.
Right. That makes sense. But I'm talking about, let's say you're a roofing contractor, you're a remodeling contractor. How do you help those clients get clients? In other words, do you have
Specific to marketing for that.
proving marketing techniques for like a remodeling contractor, a roofer? Because a lot of guys, I mean, my marketing is I do a great job and I answer the phone. What else do I need to do? Right.
So we are, and I'll say this to you, Paul. So we are probably one of the few organizations out there that do what we do that does not focus on sales and marketing as a primary aspect of what we do. So I'll give you 1 or 2, but this is not like our specialty. Actually, if anything, I often refer like digital marketing person or a branding person, but
Right.
some of the simplest lowest hanging fruit is like on-site marketing. So when you go to a job, do you have a sign in front of the house? Do you have 2 signs in front of the major arteries that feed that home? Do you have, logoed shirts on all your people? Do you have at least a magnetic thing that goes on your truck, if not a truck wrap? And the final one, if you really want to go out there and do something, do you have at least, door hangers in the 50 homes that surround that home? This is residential, but if you do residential, 50 homes that surround that home. And the one thing we used to do years ago that worked really well is we'd have like currently working at blank address. We have the guys fill in the address so they can come check out our work. We noticed your blank was blank. We noticed your trim was peeling. We noticed your roof was failing. And so we'd write a personal note and you'd make it look like a UPS flyer that hangs on the door. But when they get closer, it has your company branding on it with a personalized message. So that type of like on-site marketing is low-hanging fruit, pretty low cost, pretty low commitment, and it'll get your local market coming to you. And usually you can get at least 1 job from every job you do if you do it right.
Right. Well, I know I heard advice from a guy that he said he has a dump truck there, right? So what he does, he goes to neighbors and say, you have any paint and hard to get rid of stuff? I'll get rid of everything from the neighborhood. So he becomes a hero, right? Local guy helps all the neighbors get rid of their stuff. So you're right. But in a sense, you're to the budget side. So how many people that you start working with, one, have a budget to begin with? How far in advance? Is it a year, 2 years? Secondly, do they have a cost or a cost code for marketing or a cost code for recruiting? Or is that just they figure it'll happen?
10 to 20% have a budget when we start with them. And that's being generous. So not many even have a budget. Most of them do after a year know their numbers. They at least get them back from their accountant at some level. They have to do their taxes. How much they look at it and analyze it varies. But for those who have a budget, 1 in 100 maybe have their like marketing specced out properly. And what we do usually with them is go even deeper. We'll be like, okay, good, marketing costs X dollars, but how much went to ads? How much went to, networking, and break it down, and then do what we call lead source distribution costing chart, where we can see which ones actually deliver an ROI.
You actually get your cost per lead as a number.
Yeah, by source, by marketing source.
Right.
So you realize that flyers you've been sending out for years because you're buddies with the guy that you committed 2 years ago is actually netting you nothing, or the trade show you've been going to forever because it feels good to go is actually cost your sales team tons because they're not closing more than 3% of the leads they're being
Right.
given. But yeah, very few have that level of tracking, and even fewer even have a budget. I mean, it's one of the biggest issues in the industry. It's like to go into a year and not even know what you're going to be spending and producing. Causes a lot of issues. There's no planning. Everything's reaction.
Same thing. We gotta find some. They don't know what a recruiting budget is. They go, well, the cost of employees. So I mean, it sounds like you have I'm going to call it a franchise without a franchise, because they look at Danny and some of these people. Most franchises succeed, right? Like 80% of franchises succeed, and 80% of the businesses fail. Just as a rough number, right? So obviously, there's got to be a reason that the 80% of franchises succeed and the 80% of businesses that aren't franchises fail. Agreed? So what would you say that is? You agree with those numbers? That makes them, I think they're true.
It's decision making, right? Every day you have a cross section of decisions to make. And if you're making that decision for the first time and you have no experience making it, chances are it's not going to go well. Like you might get 70% of them right, even because you're a really good decision maker, but that's still only 70%. When you can work with an organization, whether it's a franchise or a coaching company or whatever, and they can pretty much say with about 90% accuracy or sometimes 100% accuracy, this is the decision you need to make. Not only it takes a lot of stress off, but it actually gets you to hit wins more often, because there's a ton of cost to a business to hiring the wrong person, or to investing in the wrong marketing strategy, or to taking on the wrong type of work. It's usually a 12-month, sometimes 6 months, but 6 to 12-month learning experience. You only have so many years you can run a business, and you only have so many months you can afford to make those mistakes. And so I think for us, and a lot of what I see with our members, they just want someone to tell them which to do. I've got 7 options. I know what we want, but which option is the best path to it? And between our members and our coaches and what we figured out, we're just kind of like, it's number 6, go.
Right. I heard a quote that an intelligent man learns from his own mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And I think franchise, basically, they learn from all the businesses that didn't work, right? And what does work.
Yeah.
And so it's built on I like to say, on the bankruptcies of others. You figure why there's 100 businesses go down. They all went down for different reasons. You figure out why they went down. You don't do that, right? But unfortunately, a lot of these guys are they're starting from like, okay, I'm a carpenter. I'm going to own a business. How hard can this be? I've hired 2 of my friends. My friend wants to do a remodel, and organically develops. And sometimes, I agree, about 1 million, you make that decision to own a business instead of own a job. But it's tough.
Yeah. And it's an intentional decision. It's actually not for everybody. I've seen, like, again, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 18 years old. I am designed to be an entrepreneur. I suck as an employee. I'm really not good at it, but I have a gift when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And vice versa is opposite for other people. It's if you don't like the idea of like constantly having to problem solve things, constant change, constant risk, don't take it to that next level. If you love the work, you love the craft, you love producing something beautiful in the end, and that's really all that draws you in at the end of the day, keep it to a certain size. Don't let your ego get in the way, because a lot of people do. They think they need to grow. They're told to by everything and everybody in the industry. And there is a subsection of people that should, but not everybody.
So what characteristics would you, if you come to a client or a potential client, and he's carpenter, I talked to today, he's had his own business. He quits his boss. He goes, his boss is making more than him. He goes, how hard is this to do, right? He has a couple of the boss's clients or people he has referrals from. He starts getting referrals from a realtor he knows who's flipping houses. He starts working for that guy. I literally talked to this guy today. Actually, he's a real guy. And he said, I said, well, he's grossing maybe 400,000, maybe making 50, 60,000 a year. He's probably making more when he had his own, when he's, getting paid. Yep. And he has this thing, I want to own my own business, right? I'm ready to go. I want to be a successful business person. What kind of advice would you give that person on it's a good or bad idea for that person? What kind of questions you ask so that person determines whether it's really a good idea for them or not?
So what's interesting about that is I used to hire franchises. So I used to look for that in people. And one of the biggest traits I would look for is something called fundamental, their ability to handle stress in pursuit of a goal. And there's people that can manage that stress and learn from it and get to the other side. And there's other people that either fight and get aggressive, or flight and run away, or freeze, right? And just do nothing. And if you find yourself constantly in these states of panic where you either get super aggressive and are pushing back when you think the world is, your customers are against you, your employees are against you, everybody, the world is against you, chances are you probably shouldn't make that bigger on yourself. If you, avoid conflict like the plague and don't call people back and just go after what's easy, chances are you shouldn't make that bigger. There's personality traits in people, and that's one of the big ones that defines someone's ability to move forward and actually get through challenging times. Another one's attainment, the ability to set and hit goals. Right? You have to have a thirst and a want to achieve more, to get it bigger, to push that into your team and get them wanting that stuff. And that leadership of wanting attainment in the organization is massive. Another one is probably introspection, the ability to actually understand yourself and the people around you. That makes a great leader, and it makes a good salesperson, and it makes
I bring it, the whole idea of leadership, right? That's different from having a show. I guess the question is, does the person really want to be a leader or a craftsman, which is a different kind of thing, right?
It's a good way to summarize it. So yeah, that is what it comes down to. And it's, there is more to it there's more nuance to it than that. But it's, for me, I was just like, can you and do you want to handle people and process and production, or do you just want to build something? Do you love to build? Because although that might feel similar in the beginning, it starts to be very different later on.
Right. Now, I'm not sure someone can hire someone. You can't be a carpenter and then you start your own business. So I'm going to hire another person to run the business for me.
This is what I mean by it's hard to hire people to do things you've never done yourself and have no idea to do. Yeah.
So do you have any kind of assessment? I mean, of people listening to this podcast, I would say, how are they going to tell whether I should be a business person or I should just go get a job as a project manager?
We do actually have it's actually meant for interviewing your employees, but we have an interview templating thing that we give away for free as a quick tool. I could maybe give it to you to put in the show notes if you'd like.
Okay.
And it goes through the 10 preferences and abilities that you could interview your employees on. But what it actually is it's what I used to look for in a franchisee when I was hiring them for the franchise I used to run. So it's a good litmus test to read through the questions, think through the experiences, and see how high you score on it. So we could do that.
Okay.
Send
Sure.
you that. Yeah.
I do love to do that. So is a couple, final things here. You've been very successful at helping businesses succeed. And I think the key is, one, you filter out the people that aren't going to be good. I mean, you can't send your ducks to Eagle School, right? You'll die trying. So you look for the people that are eagles, that are actually want to own their own business, have those personality traits that make them a leader versus a craftsman. Mm-hmm. And then you, I guess, coach those leaders and give them the tools they need to lead and succeed at being an entrepreneur.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's not that we don't do this, but we try to sway away from being the motivator, if that makes sense. Like there's some people that their whole business is based on motivating small companies to get to success. We're kind of like, you need to be motivated already.
Well, there's the saying, you can't motivate people, you have to hire motivated people, right?
There you go. Yeah. So we live off that principle, and it's just not a battle that I want to fight. And I've spent too much time with entrepreneurs realizing that I can't force them to want what I want for them. They have to want it for themselves.
Right. Yeah. That's great. So if you have any parting words, if you're talking to people, again, you're giving this guy, well, if you're going to do any three things, these are the three things that you're going to need to do if you really want to. Let's say he, says, yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm a leader. I'm not a craftsman. At least got past that one. So now you're giving him, you're never going to see this guy the rest of your life. You're giving him three, and being him or her, I get people correct here. So you're giving the person advice saying, okay, if you only remember these three things from our meeting today, that will be the most important things for you to remember that will have the greatest chances of you succeeding at your goals.
I say work hard. And what I mean by that is, just because you're going to grow a large organization, don't do it so that one day you can sit back and not work hard, because chances are you'll just be working hard in a different way. So don't fool yourself over mirage. Work hard, enjoy the work, and be ready for that for a long time. And that's okay. Doesn't mean you give up on the family or anything. I'm stepping back a little bit, but I still like to work hard, and I still always will. I'd say be humble. There's going to be things that are going to blow your mind, and you're not going to see it if you're not open to it. There's going to be people that are going to work for you that are way better than you at what they do, and embrace that and allow them to move up in the organization and give them opportunity to do so. yeah, being humble comes out in a lot of avenues, but you need to really not put your ego in the center of the whole business. And what else could I say? Care about what you do. Like if you don't have a passion for this, if your only passion is to make money, I suppose it can work, but long term, I've never actually seen that pan out really well. There's always a disaster at the end of that tunnel that sounds great until the last minute. Some weird thing happened in the whatever. So it's just like, make sure you have passion for what you're doing. We're going to spend 40 to 60 hours a week doing something. We should at least like it, and we should be excited by it. And if it's not, I would reconsider trying to make that thing too big and too much of
something else. Cool. Well, Danny, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. Now, people want to get in touch with you because they decide, well, maybe I don't know how to do it myself, and I'm interested in what you do and how you do it. Can you please give our audience here how to get in touch with you?
Yep. So simple as go to our website, btacademy.com. So B as in Bravo, T as in Tango, and Academy, academy.com. You can read a bit about us. There's free downloads there. There's templates there. There's a podcast there. There's a chance to put in an application to talk to us. So yeah, it's a good place to kind of start. Our podcast is called Contractor Evolution. If you want to look for it on any major platforms, it's all there to start have a listening experience. If you want to just check out who we are and learn some stuff. And I'll give you that template as well. If you want to put in the show notes, people can check out if they want to assess where they sit as an entrepreneur. Feel free.
Cool. Well, thanks, Danny. I really appreciate being here today. And in my opinion, not to check it out, it's just not smart. It's like, a lot of guys, you may check out 2 or 3 companies, that's fine, but at least check things out. Go to Breakthrough Academy, go to find somebody who's a good match for you. But obviously, I don't think you're going to do it on your own. I think that's the first thing you have to admit, guys. You can't do it on your own. You need help. And the question is what help you need and where you need to get it. And I think this is a really good option. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate being here this evening.
Thanks for having me, Paul.